Hi everyone, this is Stepan. I'll go over the last game from round 9 of the candidates tournament played between Levon Aronian and Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. Before this game, Mamedyarov was in second place with half a point less than the leader Fabiano Caruana, and Levon Aronian was surprisingly only sharing last place with 3 out of 8, which is less than 50%, a very unfortunate result considering he was one of the pre-tournament favorites. In this game, Levon opened with pawn to d4, we have knight to f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5 and g3 by Levon Aronian, and we get another Catalan Opening, which is becoming the #1 weapon for white on top level. Bishop to e7, bishop to g2, white fianchettos his bishop, both sides castle king side, d takes c4, Mamedyarov goes for the open Catalan, queen to c2, the main move by Aronian, preparing to recapture on c4 with the queen, b6, and queen takes c4, regaining his pawn. And all this is still common theory on the well-trodden theoretical path. Bishop to b7, developing on the long diagonal and challenging the bishop on g2, knight to c3, c5, striking in the center, and rook to d1 by Levon, now threatening to take on c5 with tempo on the queen, winning a pawn, so Mamedyarov defends and develops his knight at the same time with knight b to d7. And here Aronian plays an aggressive move which is thematic for the opening, knight to e5, offering an exchange of bishops and setting up a trap for black, because if black in this position takes on e5, then d takes e5 would just win on the spot as the rook on d1 is defended, and white would be attacking both the queen and the f6 knight, and of course Mamedyarov avoids that, he didn't play that, but after knight to e5 he simply exchanged the bishops as his bishop on b7 was hanging. We have king takes g2, queen to c8, now finally getting away from the stare of the rook on the d file, knight takes d7, and queen takes d7, and in this position the tactic of taking on c5 and winning a pawn doesn't actually work as it did previously, as now after Levon takes with d takes c5 attacking the queen, Mamedyarov isn't losing a pawn because he can play a Zwischenzug checking the king with queen to c6 check. And Aronian covers f3, and Mamedyarov can now regain the pawn safely with queen takes c5. We have queen takes c5, an exchange of queens, bishop takes, and bishop f4. And it's important that Aronian didn't retreat his king to the first rank after queen to c6 check, but played f3 instead, as that is preventing the f6 knight from entering key squares on e4 and g4 and definitely reducing its scope significantly. And in this position Mamedyarov continues with rook f to d8, developing e4, expanding thematically for the Catalan in the center, knight to e8, which is a strange move by Mamedyarov. He's probably thinking of rerouting the knight via the c7 square and challenging the c3 knight somehow, but I think it's a huge waste of time. And there is also a possibility that he's going for a maneuver which is thematic for the Berlin defense, in which black plays knight to e8 and then goes for g6 and knight to g7. But since white already played e4, the f5 square is defended, so I don't really see the point of knight to e8. I think it's just a waste of tempo. But perhaps he was even moving away in advance of e5. King to f1, king to f8, both players move their kings closer to the center, anticipating a soon coming endgame. King to e2, king to e7, knight b5, an aggressive move, but once again not with so much purpose. Rook d to c8, rook a to c1, and perhaps this move, rook d to c8, was the case of the wrong rook. Okay, he is trying to avoid an exchange, but perhaps playing the a rook to c8 would have been more accurate. But of course, after the a7 pawn is defended, so perhaps a6 and then rook a to c8 would have been more precise. But rook d to c8, rook a to c1, and a6 in this position, chasing the knight away, it goes to c3, b5. And in this position, Aronian actually stands significantly better. He's controlling the open d-file. His knight is much better than Mamedyarov's, of course, because it's stuck on e8. His pawn structure is more advanced and he has more space both in the center and on the king side. But it's definitely not enough for an easy conversion. And it's still possible to win, but it will most likely end up in a draw. a4, bishop to d6. Mamedyarov is ignoring Aronian's pawn push. Bishop to e3, and rook a to b8, now threatening b takes a4 and having significant pressure on b2. So Aronian reacts with a takes b, a takes b5, bishop to a7, gaining a tempo on the rook, but once again a move I don't really understand, because black simply gets to double his rooks easier if he wishes to. bishop to d4, rook to c4, attacking the dark squared bishop, e5, chasing black's bishop from d6, and bishop to c5. And in this position, Aronian plays a beautiful looking tactical move, but it didn't really serve much purpose. It's exploiting the fact that the c5 bishop is potentially undefended, and if the rooks get traded off, it could fall off. And so he plays knight to d5 check. And of course, black is forced to take the knight. We have e takes d5, and in this position, if he plays rook takes c4, that would be losing actually for white, because after rook takes c4, b takes, bishop takes c5, check, king e6, the position would be much easier to play for black, and he would actually go pawn up because both white's b pawn and his e pawn would be attacked. So after knight to d5, e takes d5, he didn't play rook takes c4, he played bishop takes c5 check. And after bishop takes c5 check and king to e6, Aronian plays a bad move here. He should have played bishop to d4, retreating the bishop and defending e5, but instead he forced a trade of rooks with b3, gaining a tempo on the rook and just forcing it to take because there is no other square for it. So after rook takes c1, Mamedyarov is now able to go a pawn up. He just grabs the pawn on e5. And Aronian's tactical move looked great, but ended up improving black's position and actually gaining material for him. Had he defended e5, things would have been much different. And he has some compensation for the pawn, because the bishop is definitely much better than the poor knight on e8, but a pawn is a pawn, and he will have to prove his compensation first. We have king to d3, approaching the weak d5 pawn, king to e6, bishop to b4, king d7, king to d4, now attacking the pawn on d5, and knight to c7, defending both the c5 pawn and the e5 pawn. And in this position, Aronian finds a great move. He plays bishop to a5. This is the way to get back material, as there is no way for Mamedyarov to keep his pawns now. If he tried defending with king to d6, his position would actually be busted, because after king d6, Aronian is able to exchange all the pieces, gain back material, and get a much better ending. So rook takes c7, rook takes, bishop takes check, king takes, and after king to d5, the position is actually completely winning for Aronian, and despite material equality, because his king is so much more active that black wouldn't stand a chance to defend his pawn structure, and white would just be able to either pick up the b5 pawn or start taking on f7, g7, and h7. So after bishop to a5, he didn't even try defending. He played knight to e6 check, allowing Aronian to grab the pawn, king takes d5, and we have rook a7 attacking the bishop, b4 closing down the possibility for either side to advance on the queen side, rook a6, f4, taking some more squares from the knight and now depriving it from going to g5 as well, rook to d6 check, king e4, and rook to d4 check, and here they agreed to a draw. And it's definitely justified, since there is really no room for improvement for either side. The rooks will most likely soon get exchanged off, and the pawn structure is completely symmetrical, which means nobody could forcibly create a passed pawn. And after this less than exciting draw, I must say, Mamedyarov is still in clear second, trailing behind Fabiano with only half a point, and Levon is still in last place, sharing last place with 3.5. And it will definitely be interesting to see how Mamedyarov plays with the white pieces tomorrow in round 10, as he will most probably have to push for a win to catch Caruana, and he can't afford any more easy draws. This was with black, so it's understandable, but with the white pieces he will have to play much more aggressively. Okay everyone, thanks very much for watching, and stay tuned for more games from the Candidates Tournament, as I will be covering all of them. Cheers, bye!